Good day. Welcome to everyone. My name is Christine Joy Tawai, your moderator for this webinar, and I am joined today by Andrew Cogerty, our Chief Security Evangelist, and we are going to take you through a webinar on how to simplify your security with Microsoft. Over to you, Andy.
Thank you very much, Christine. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. So quick agenda just to run through. I'll cover just a little bit about Seacon and who we are. I'll talk about the problem as we see it today with regards to cybersecurity, then talk about how Microsoft can potentially help you with that. I'll go through our approach and then we'll cover off some centralized visibility with Microsoft and wrap up with some key takeaways. So firstly, a bit about Seacon. We've been around for over 22 years now, helping organisations with cybersecurity since inception. I've been with the organisation for at least 20 years of those. My role is all around helping organisations be more resilient in today's threat landscape. So the problem with cybersecurity, my team perform a lot of cyber risk assessments, and these are common themes that we see. I want to draw your attention to the key stats though. Last year, the average time to detect a breach was 212 days, and the average time to detect and contain was 287. Now, these aren't anomalous numbers. They've averaged around these sort of number of 200 plus days for the last 5 years consistently, and that's a report that's done by the IBM and Pomon Institute. But what's fueling that, and you know, what are we seeing in our cyber risk assessments? Because organisations are spending more on cyber security, so you'd expect the figure to be trending down. We're fighting against the vulnerabilities. So last year was a record year for exploitable vulnerabilities, and for security teams to stay on top of this is becoming increasingly challenging. Couple that with organisations who have gone around addressing the cyber problem by buying tooling. So these are your antiviruses, your firewalls. The challenge that we often see is the ability for an organisation to stay on top of these tools. You know, you've got multiple different management consoles, different vendors, you've got to deal with their release cycles. So it's not just about the configuration of the tools, you know, security isn't set and forget, but it's actually maintaining these tools and keeping them up to date. You know, these vendors aren't releasing updates for the fun of it. They're there to, one, make these products more secure, but also to make your environment more secure. And you know, with COVID and as organisations embrace digital transformation, our users and our data are no longer behind our traditional firewalls, you know, that castle wall and moat approach. Our data and our users can now be anywhere. So why consider Microsoft? How does Microsoft help here? Well, I alluded to the multiple different tools, you know, all siloed away. They don't share intelligence with each other. And that's one of the key things that Microsoft brings to the table. Their security portfolio all integrates and shares intelligence, which gives you a better view across the entire cyber attack chain, which I'll show you shortly. By consolidating with Microsoft as well, a lot of organizations we've helped have actually ended up saving money. So rather than paying separate vendors amounts of money for their tooling, by going with the right SKU with Microsoft to address your capability, you'll find that there's potential for cost savings, not just on the licensing by decommissioning other tools, but from the simplified security operations. As an example, the endpoint itself is built into the OS, so you don't have to worry about, you know, updating your endpoint antivirus every time there's a new release. It's actually part of the OS. Microsoft have, you know, always been good at third-party integrations, and that rings true with security. And then Microsoft also have their own security incident and event monitoring tool, SIEM solution, that integrates with their stack, but as well as any third-party tools that you might want to maintain in pace for, you know, specific reasons unique to your organization. So you can replace up to about 40 odd products with Microsoft security. You know, you're talking email gateways, endpoint security, mobile device management, you know, identity and access management, VPN gateways. So Microsoft come to the table with a really complete portfolio to help you address cybersecurity end to end. And like I say, by working with Microsoft, organizations we've helped have found that they're able to do more with less when it comes to a resourcing perspective. It's a lot easier to operate and stay on top of all of this tooling. So, there's a broad portfolio and you're probably thinking 40 odd products replacing. Within Microsoft's security portfolio, I've got the key components that we've been helping organizations with where they've realized value. Azure Active Directory being the identity provider there. Microsoft Endpoint Manager, stroke Intune to manage all your devices, whether they're endpoints, mobiles, tablet PC, tablet machines. You've got the Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, so that's a full next generation endpoint antivirus solution that also includes the latest sort of features you'd expect, such as endpoint detection and response. I alluded earlier that we're moving our data and our users are everywhere. So you get good visibility into cloud applications and can put controls in place around the access and type of data in those cloud applications. And then one that many organizations that have already moved to Office 365, you've also got the Defender for Office 365 to deal with your anti-phishing, email-borne antivirus, email-borne viruses, and sort of whaling attempts and that sort of thing. Now, the other side benefits that we see with Microsoft as well is there's some good fundamental, good practice security stuff you can put in place, such as conditional access, which I'll cover shortly, but it also gives you visibility into your security score. So how up to date in terms of are you with regards to security patches. They have things like attack surface reduction rules. So this is where you get visibility over the status of an endpoint and where is that attack surface and are there changes you can make to reduce that attack surface. All best practice identifying risk and remediating risk, and the way that Microsoft presents the information gives you a clear view on how your security posture is progressing over time. We can implement DLP using things like information protection, and we can work towards that zero trust journey with compliance manager and conditional access. So, making decisions based on a user or a device and granting access based on policy. And should you have any compliance mandates or desires to be compliant with certain standards, Microsoft has a number of templates available where you can automatically run that standard against your deployment and see where your gaps are or see if you are compliant. So again, it's really good when it comes to giving you that centralized visibility. So how does Microsoft fare across the entire cyber attack kill chain? I mentioned a lot of these sort of key components earlier, but Microsoft can cover you across the full MITRE attack chain. So both from a visibility and a control perspective. So for example, 90+% of attacks start with an email. Well, you've got that phishing mail protection. You've got the ability to have something called safe links, which will check an attachment before, check a link in a safe controlled environment before allowing a user to go there. And all of these products integrate. So from that first email coming in to trying to drop some malware onto your machine, or should someone be trying to, use stolen credentials to access an environment, all of this is possible to have complete visibility and control of. And like I say, all of these solutions integrate with each other. So identity is sort of, one of the main pillars when it comes to defining cybersecurity in today's day and age. It needs to be your, single source of truth when it comes to people that you want to allow into your environment, whether they be employees, third parties, customers, etc. As you can see, the Azure Active Directory from Microsoft extends across both on-premise devices, cloud, and enables you to effectively set policy based on who that user is, where they're coming from, and you can put all sorts of automated, clever responses in place. So, for example, if you detect impossible travel where a user might be logging into their Active Directory account from home, but you also then detect that they're trying to access a third-party SaaS application from another location that's different IP address to where they originated from, and you can actually, it's physically impossible for them to be in those two locations at the same time. So what you can actually have is actually have that user's account locked, for example. So you've got a lot of power in terms of automated response, which eases on operations, but ultimately it gives you that visibility and control over identities and what type of access you want to grant to those identities. We then go on to Microsoft Endpoint Manager and Defender, which work very well together, particularly when you couple it up with Azure Active Directory. So Defender for Endpoint, we've already covered. It's next generation antivirus. It's Gartner leading in the top right-hand quadrant in the last, at least last two reports anyway. We've done a number of benchmarking exercises against third-party tools, and that's something we can help you do in your environment. Defender for Endpoint fares very well against the latest threats, and that was further supported by a piece of work that MITRE did towards the end of last year, where they fired some of the latest attacks against a number of different anti-malware solutions, and Defender came out in the top two in that scenario. And that report, you can Google it, you'll find it quite easily. Now, the Endpoint Manager enables you to have control over those devices, and working with Azure Active Directory, you can actually get to a point where you're defining access policies based on who the user is and the state of their device. And you can have a policy-based decision granting access based on how that device fares. So for example, if it's a trusted user coming in from a trusted machine, they've got antivirus running on that endpoint, their patch status is up to date, so there's no known vulnerabilities on that endpoint, you can grant them full access. Should you have another scenario where it's a trusted user from an untrusted endpoint, you might still want to allow them in, but you might want to give them a limited level of access. So this is where sort of those three key components of the Microsoft portfolio working together can essentially enable you to enforce zero trust access. So how can we help? So a lot of organizations, if you asked me about Microsoft security 5 years ago, I would have had a certain nervous air around me with that. I've been in security for a long time. That's not the case anymore. Microsoft is spending billions on cybersecurity. The majority of their security portfolio is recognized by all the analysts as a leader. But there's still often, when you've invested in expensive third-party tools, you've bought those tools for a reason. There's still that air of lack of confidence out there that I see sometimes. So we can help you with that. So we do a number of different exercises where we can help you validate the efficacy of that solution. So should you have a leading third-party endpoint anti-malware solution, you're considering making the move to Defender Endpoint, what we can actually do is do a benchmarking exercise of your existing tool against the Defender Endpoint, fire attacks at it, do all sorts of performance assessments, and give you a fully written report, so you know that if you make that move, you're not taking a step backwards in security, for example. And that validation process extends to the whole Microsoft portfolio. So if you've got a mail gateway and you want to test that you can migrate those policies across successfully, again, we can help you with that. We can then go on to help you design the solution and make sure it's meeting your requirements, both from a business perspective, but also the performance and security perspective, and then work with you to build and configure and roll out a solution for you. Breaking that down into a bit more detail, that validation can include anything from mapping requirements, review how you've got your existing solution, make sure that we're not moving across rules that are redundant now, and like I say, give you that benchmarking exercise so you've got the confidence to make that move. From the design, build, test stages onwards, we work very closely with you to make sure that at every stage of that journey, we're establishing confidence that, this is the right move and that you can move successfully across to Microsoft. And it's a big change. You've been used to third-party tools, lots of them everywhere. We also provide post-go live support to make sure that you've got Microsoft security experts on hand should you have any questions. But we obviously ensure that your team are empowered to be able to manage these solutions moving forward. So we also spoke about centralized visibility. So Microsoft have their own SIEM solution. You can use it as a standalone SIEM solution. One of the main benefits is that the SIEM is cloud-based and it's joined to your Azure tenant. So any data sovereignty guidelines that you have to work to, all of that data will remain within any kind of controls you put in place in your Azure tenant. We also offer it as a service. From experience, that challenge of not having enough security personnel to stay on top of security products, SIEM regardless of the vendor, is never set and forget. So we can actually stand this up as a service for you in your own tenant. We can ingest all of your Microsoft security logs. We can also ingest any third-party security tools you've got there, whether they're on-premise or in the cloud. We correlate what's going on there and essentially focus on genuine incidents against your organization from our 24/7 SOC. So if you're looking to, go down the route of deploying SIEM whilst you go down this Microsoft journey, it's a good opportunity to really transform security. We can help you from the start to the finish. All we need to do is to work with you to get those logs ingested into your tenant. The way we approach it, it's everything's included in our pricing, so you haven't got any surprise costs. You don't have to worry about the implementation or setup or ongoing maintenance. And we meet with you monthly, providing reports and look at insights that we're seeing from your organisation to help you reduce risk and help you address any kind of broken business processes or risky behaviour. A quick snapshot, the main features of Azure Sentinel. So it's highly, it's got the infinite scalability of Azure cloud services. Microsoft come with a vast range of connectors that enable you to ingest logs. Essentially, they can support anything that's syslog or ceph, but you may need to develop some custom connectors. This is something that we deliver as part of our SIEM and SOC as a service with Connect Protect. But I don't need to read all of these bits out to you. By working with a managed service provider like ourselves, we take a lot of that day-to-day running and staying on top of things and fine-tuning and actually having that SOC monitoring what's going on 24/7. So key takeaways, Microsoft has a credible and comprehensive security capability. It can be used to help simplify your security stack, and as a result, that should enable your teams to stay on top of these things, but also free up some spare time to focus on other business priorities. And we can help you understand and realize these benefits. So whether it's you want to talk to us about understanding how you can exploit your existing Microsoft licensing, if you need some advice around what the best licensing is for your use cases, again, we can help with all of that for you. So should you wish to discuss this in more detail with your specific requirements in detail, do feel free to reach out to me directly and we can have a no obligation consultation. I can share some ideas based on your scenarios and help you on that journey to realizing better security and streamlined operations.
Thank you, Wendy. We would like to thank everyone for joining our webinar today. If you want an offline conversation on how you can begin simplifying your security without compromising on protection, please feel free to contact us. You can see Andy's contact details on the screen. We will also get in touch with you after this webinar. Have a good day ahead.